Um, hey, Ali, very important. Let's go to square one. So, Quran. Are you a Muslim yourself? Yeah. I do not, and Sunni Muslim? Okay. My point simply is this. Whatever grade, whatever kind of Muslim you are, Sunni, Shia, Quran only, whatever, Ahmadiyya, whatever variety of Muslim you are, the point simply is you could not be following Islam or the Quran. You follow Islam of later literature, not of the Quran. And I mean that in multiple different ways.
So you're saying the current Quran is not the same as the first Quran?
No. What I'm saying is your current Quran cannot be used to substantiate the Islam that you follow today. Remember, in your Islam, when you say you're a Muslim, you also mean how you pray, how you.
Has that changed?
What's that?
Has that changed? Has the prayer changed?
I'm not even talking about change. What I'm simply saying is the Quran's Islam. Yeah. Let's pretend for simplicity's sake.
I'm trying to understand.
I know, Ali. Let's pretend for a second that the Quran we have today is the Quran that was originally written down. Yeah, let's pretend that for a moment, which I don't think to be the case.
From the 7th.
I don't think that is the case, but let's for now, for simplicity, let's assume that to be true. So in other words, I'm not even complicating things by talking about current day Quran versus Quran of that day. I'm not talking about that. Let's say it's the same Quran and therefore pick any Quran from any time. And then pick details of your Islam. The way you pray, the way you go to your mosque, the Sharia you have, all sorts of things that you consider to be Islam. If you bring those things together, compare and contrast. My challenge to you is you are not following Islam with the Quran. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two, I mean in multiple ways. Yeah, I'm explaining that. In multiple different ways.
Oh, hurry up, then.
In multiple different ways that is the case. You better don't delay us. In multiple different ways. One of those ways is using the Quran, you simply cannot have a clue as to who this person called Muhammad was. Simply can't paint a picture of him metaphorically. Who was he? What problems did he run into in Mecca? Did he ever live in Mecca? Did he run to Medina, Hijrah? When did that happen? What was the context of that happening? Who made it happen? Who forced that upon him? Who followed Muhammad? In Medina, what did he do? What kinds of people followed him? What was the agreement in regards to people?
But what's that got to do with Islam?
None of those things, none of those details you can get from the Quran.
Oh, you're right.
The problem is this. In other words, reading this, you cannot get an idea of the history of how this began. Simply can't.
Yeah, but I'm sure you know the answer, so why are you making me answer your question? There's Quran and then there's Hadith.
Good. In other words, and you follow the hadiths. You pick most of your information from the hadiths.
Follow both. As Muslims, you have to follow both. Because you can't have one without the other.
My point simply is, you can't have your Islam with the Quran. Most of your Islam comes from the hadiths. If we were to...
But they go together. Like peanut butter and jelly. Let's go together. I understand what your point is.
Okay, my point...
You
can say that about the New Testament and Old Testament.
I'll come to the end.
Very good, very good.
That's not good.
But is he a Christian? Yeah. A Muslim, yeah?
How do you know this book? You are. If you are right in your assumptions, I completely understand the validity of your question. The assumption that this is peanut butter and that's bread or whatever, jelly or whatever. How do you know this book came from one person called Muhammad?
It did not. The most talks about prophet with respect, brother, in the Quran.
How do you know?
Who?
How do I know he came from Muhammad?
How do you know this was contributed to by one person called Muhammad? The Muhammad of Islam.
There's a level of faith
But the Quran...
So I don't know what you want me to say, but this
How do you know? How can you use any information you want to use?
concept didn't come from Muhammad. So God to Gabriel to Muhammad.
But brother, the most...
Ali, one second. I'm speaking to Ali. How do you... do we have water?
Brother. But the most, with respect, the most referenced person in the Quran is Prophet Musa.
Okay, tea.
Yeah.
Ali,
Muhammad really got nothing to do with the Quran.
how do you...
Yeah, go on. You want a little bit?
My wife.
Oh, that's your wife.
Yeah, that's good. How do you know that this book was revealed through one man called Muhammad that you have in your mind? How do you know that?
How do I know that? Through the hadith.
Through the hadiths,
Not through him.
not through here. In other words,
Because
the hadiths.
There's no Sahabas mentioned. There's one or two Sahabas mentioned. Maybe there's Muhammad's mentioned a little bit, and that's it.
In other words,
Yeah.
how do you know?
Yeah.
This is an honest question. Use any information. Yeah, you've given so far. You've given honest answers.
I'm trying to
But-
understand your point. That's
Yes. How do you know that there wasn't someone called a Tom 250 years after Islam, after the Quran was written down? Someone called Tom who said, "Oh, wait a second. We haven't got a good religion now. A religion that can compete with Christianity, for example. And for us to be able to compete with Christianity, we need a character called Muhammad. Some one guy who is our main prophet."
Hero, main hero.
What's that?
If you like, main hero.
Main hero. And so we don't have. Let me make that. Let me bring that hero into existence. And he wrote a group of people of some sort. Wrote the Sirah, wrote the Hadiths. Without them, you haven't got a clue. In other words, until the time you only had the Quran, no one had really had a clue as to who Muhammad could have been. Now these people are making that up. How do you know that is not what happened?
Because how can a group of people write about my life? And write about his life, write about your life, write about his life. They didn't write just about the Prophet. They wrote about Abu Bakr, Umar, they wrote about everyone. Like Salman al-Farisi, for example, his story is in the hadith because he told the Prophet his own story. So how does someone make that up?
Yeah, why would people do that? Is your question.
Yeah, you just said a group of people made up
So,
his life. I'm saying,
yeah. Why would people do that?
what's the point? How? No. How? How can someone do that?
Well,
Easy to make up. Anything.
easy to make up
No, but
anything.
I'm saying, that's
What do you
not-
mean how?
but his story-
The why might be a question.
His story, no, his story, Salman al-Farisi.
What if it's just
is
someone
in the
to be a
hadith.
role model?
Yeah, no, Salman al-Farisi is the hadith, and we get his story from the hadith. So you're saying a group of people came together and just made everyone's story up. That's what you said.
I'm suggesting if someone were to tell you that that is what happened, how do you contradict that? Because you better be clear. Let me put it this way. Would you like to hope that when you pass away that you're going to go to heaven? Yeah, you like to hope it. And is that very important for you?
Of course.
So it's very important for you. But unfortunately though, if you were to believe in a fantasy story, it isn't going to work.
So you don't believe in heaven and hell?
But
I believe in heaven. I'm a Christian.
Yours is fantastic.
I am a Christian. I believe in heaven and hell. That's not the point. My point to you simply is, if you were to follow this, but like I said earlier, a group of people made things up, created this character called Muhammad, and gave you a religion, and made you think that as long as you do these things, you're fine.
New Testament's wrong.
Gave you the impression. But let's say that's all fantasy, made up things, for whatever reason, because of whatever motivation. Clearly, that fake religion isn't going to take you to heaven. Clearly.
But yours,
And that is why it is very important, Ali, for you to really establish as a fact that Islam was not made up. You can't depend on.
Which I have.
Good.
Have you
And
got
that
any
is where
facts
I'm
for
asking you.
Christianity?
On what basis do you establish, do you contradict my suggestion to you that some people sat together, not even together, wrote a list of books in the environment that they were presented with for their own motivations, and that is what you follow today as Islam. They created this character called Muhammad and so on. How do you know that is not the case?
how
Sorry.
do you know about Jesus?
I'm
No
asking.
facts. No facts in Jesus.
Whether I am right or wrong has no bearing on whether you are right or wrong. We're independent.
How do we know about any historical figure?
A good question to ask, but that is a question that Ali needs to ask
we don't.
and apply the learning to Islam.
We can believe and claim that we
to
don't,
Any historical.
unless you were there.
Ali, I understand.
Yeah. No, we can do that because how
Good.
do we know?
So,
How do we know? It's written down.
Early sources, early sources,
People
written
seen it
down.
written down. They wrote it down. They said I've seen this person. Then that person writes it down. Then it gets verified, and then it gets passed
How does
down.
it get verified?
Because the person wrote it down and said I've seen this person.
Just be,
Napoleon. How do you know Napoleon
brother,
existed?
brother, that's hearsay. All it is hearsay.
How do you know anyone existed? How do you know Genghis Khan existed?
Ali,
Does that make sense?
Ali, very
You
good.
can go with any.
Ali.
With any historical, you can't just go with Muhammad. You can go with anyone, like you said.
Ali.
Jesus wasn't true.
Ali,
Didn't exist.
Ali, we need to do this
There is
very.
historical that he was a person. There is.
Nothing historical about Jesus.
Ali, this is
I'm not
very
going to Jesus in the
important.
Bible, I'm just saying
Back
that a
in
man
50,
named
there was
Jesus.
a book. There was a book.
Ali,
There was a
what
book,
you're saying is very important.
the most influential people
Not
on
a
earth.
prophet or a
Have you read that
follower.
book?
No claim.
And
Son,
he put
just a
one
claim.
as Muhammad. He has proof that Muhammad existed. Why would he put him on there?
Well, he was born a Hebrew,
Ali.
but doesn't know the
That's
Hebrew
your
name of
proof
Moses.
Just because someone claimed Muhammad existed, it means he existed. Is that the proof?
Born in
Ali.
Born into a Hebrew family,
people
but
that write
doesn't
books.
know
Books are not
the original
like
birth
from
name
the
of
tree that
Moses,
me and you
the
can write.
Hebrew
They have
name.
to be
How
verified.
can
They have
that
to be.
happen?
They have to be in a library. They have to be checked by scholars. They have to be checked by learned people.
In the
And
New
then the
Testament,
book gets published.
What name is
Does that make sense? The evidence is checked.
Yeah.
So once the
I come from India.
That's his adopted
once the
name.
evidence
That's
is
not his
checked,
birth name.
then
That's not a Hebrew
Ali, I
name.
come from
that's
India.
how it works. You know the answer to this
You know what
question. I don't
Moses means?
understand. I've always having a decent
Take it
answer.
Ali,
withdrawn
Ali,
from the
I come
water.
from India.
Yes.
There is a book called Ramayana.
Translation now, like, I don't
A book called Ramayana, which claims that Rama
Yeah? The
was
followers
God
of Hebrew. What did they name him?
who existed
I'm not Hebrew.
in Indian history in Ayodhya, in India.
But if
I don't want to
It's a claim. Do you agree with that claim? Just because a book is written? No, but according to Islam, is that viable?
Carry on. What you say.
Is that viable according to Islam?
According to people, it's Bible. But there's
No, no, ma-
published publications.
Ali,
According to verification.
Ali.
It's not
If,
true, Islam.
Moshe,
please, listen to me, Ali. This is very important.
Moses,
I asked you earlier, how have you established for yourself?
you know what his name is?
Islam explaining.
No. Let me, please listen me out.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Just how I asked you earlier, how have you established for yourself that
Killing all newborn Hebrew.
what you're following as Islam, with the information from Sirah and the Hadiths, is not made up fantasy? I asked you, and you said, it's because books have been written. And you also said, as a matter of fact, there is even a recent book which claims Muhammad was the most influential person on earth. Just because claims are made in such books, you're happy. Because you think they must have done their research. That's your claim. They must have done their research. Because otherwise they wouldn't write, is what you're saying. If that is true, the guys who wrote Ramayana must have done their research.
True.
And if, in other words, if that is the case, Rama is God, not Islamic Allah.
True to them. Yeah.
No, truth is truth for everyone. It's not true to them, true to you. No, truth is truth to everyone.
God.
Truth is true to everyone. And that is the very definition of truth. You can bring, in other words, when they wrote it down, if you had brought a few people from Somalia or Arabian Peninsula there, they would have seen him. So it would have been true for everyone. So simple point is just, you would clearly disagree with that. You would clearly disagree that Rama is God.
Profile you.
In other words,
Now, if I said it,
merely depending on books being written will not help you. Insufficient.
No problem. Okay.
Now let's come back to you. So please don't just claim there are books written. You need to go dig deeper. You need to get to a logical case of getting to finer historical details in regards to the contents of these books.
How do I do it?
Very good point. You need to examine who wrote the books.
Okay.
You need to examine when did they write the books.
Forget the books.
Well,
You just
what
said forget the books.
I
Let's
can't.
leave the books. How else can I prove it?
Okay, I don't know exactly what I said. I said a few statements in a particular context. If you were to just depend on existence of books, it isn't going to help. So if you have the idea that I'm going to just say that there are books, leave that idea behind, is what I'm saying. Just because books exist, it doesn't mean anything. Now you need to come to the details of the books. When were they written? Who were they written by? What could have been the motivations they could they have benefited by writing some fake fantasy ideas? Could they have benefited? Who were scrutinizing their works? The ones who were scrutinizing, what kind of knowledge could they have had? Many of these details are very important to understand. Very, very important to understand. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying? Was there physical coercion involved in the entire process? Was there liberty for people who wanted to challenge these ideas to challenge and say, well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I know someone who comes from that region, and I can honestly say this cannot be true. If someone were to make that point, could he have survived? All these points are very important. And what I can honestly tell you is, under the whole of the rule of Islam, Islamic caliphate, there was plenty of physical coercion involved. Plenty of physical coercion. Perfect recipe that no challenger who would have had facts to challenge these claims could have challenged and survived. Perfect recipe. Number one, no challenge could have survived. Point number two, even those who wrote down what they wrote down, there's very good reasons to think that they wanted to please some people who were already bringing in physical coercion. In other words, they needn't have been convinced by the truth of what they were writing, as much as them wanting to get the favor of the ones who had massive political power and who can employ physical coercion and to be in the good books of them. In other words, that's just two examples. And the literature was written very late. Perfect recipe again for a disaster, that anyone who could have actually known the facts during the time of the supposed Muhammad, if it only existed, there was no such person to challenge the writings. The writings were Sahih Bukhari, for example, wasn't written near Mecca, anywhere near Mecca, written in a faraway land. Again, a perfect recipe for disaster, that there was no one who could have been local to what was happening during the time of Muhammad, even though that happened.
You know how the chain of narration works?
I'm not interested in how it works. I'm interested in finding out if it even existed. Do you know if it even existed?
The chain of narration.
Yeah. How do you establish that there existed a chain of narration? How do you establish that?
Assuming they existed. It's not a bottle or anything. It's a chain of narration. Meaning there was a way of verifying information. That's it.
Ali, I'm going to come back to my simple question. That is what you have been told. I'm asking you right now, how do you know that was true? How do you know that there was a chain of narration? How do you know that there was a guy called Abu Huraira, for example? How do you know of his existence?
You know you're saying the same thing. I told you it's written in the books, and you said forget the books, and I said okay, let's forget the books, and then you brought it back to the books again.
Maybe
I told you okay.
Maybe there was a misunderstanding.
Hold on, I told you let's forget the books, because clearly you have an issue with books. I said forget books. Give me another way I can verify, because I'm with you now. Fine. I have no proof that the hadith exists. I have no proof about the Quran.
Very good.
Fine. But give me another way other than a book that I can verify.
Okay, just to clarify, I did not say. Ali,
I told you that
Ali,
my books are written down and my books are checked. And you said, how do you know they're checked?
Ali,
and you told me
you're
to find
somewhere we have unfortunately, somewhere we have lost each other. I don't know where. Let me clarify again.
Let's come back.
I am not saying books are useless, throw it in the bin. I'm not saying that. Books are valid sources of information to establish history. I completely agree. Valid sources of information. So I never could have implied books are useless. All that I meant earlier, all that I could have meant, although I could have misspoke, all that is in my mind at least is, just because there is a book, it doesn't mean the claims made in the book are true.
Which is true. Okay.
That is all that I made, and that is why I am saying you can't just say a book exists and therefore you need to dig deeper. When you find books, you need to find if the books are authentic, true.
So how do you know this one's not authentic?
Well, that is exactly my point. When I read this, okay, now so far, are you with me in understanding that the hadiths, seerah, late literature written in faraway land, literature written in a land area where there was plenty of physical coercion, literature written when people could have easily written fake accounts to gain favor from power. You with me on that?
Okay.
So now, hadiths and seerah we are keeping aside. Coming to the Quran, the problem I find is this: reading the Quran, I can honestly, I'm through God, I'm just about to finish survey of the Quran, and through God's grace, I'm intending to write a book on how Islam actually began according to Quran's own words. And I can honestly say, the claim that there was this one guy called Muhammad who had conflict in Mecca with pagan Meccan Arabs is bogus. This could not have happened according to the Quran.
Understand what you just said, right?
What is that?
Did you understand what you just said?
Yes.
You said you're going to write a book using only the Quran, referencing that Muhammad was not the guy. But the thing is, he's hardly mentioned in it, so how can you use that only?
But what I can do is assume that there was a guy called Muhammad who is being referred to here. Assume that to be the case, because I don't want to challenge every claim. Assume him to be the main guy in this.
Stick to the Quran, you shouldn't go to Muhammad because
Exactly. If I just stick to the Quran, what I can say is, okay, maybe let me rephrase. What I can say is, whoever was the protagonist in this book,
you should say that.
whatever his name was, wherever he was born, whatever his history was, whether he was one person or multiple people here, what I can confidently say is that whoever they were, they did not have a conflict with pagan Meccan Arabs. Simply bogus. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Whoever they were, simply bogus. So whatever this religion, whatever the religion of the Quran is, it simply did not start with a conflict that some supposed prophet had with idolatrous people, i.e. people who are worshipping idols. The Quran contradicts that claim. In other words, the Quran is already contradicting the Islam that you have. Even, in other words, okay, 2 points. The Quran doesn't talk much about Islam of today, and even in the areas where it overlaps with the claims of today's Islam, it contradicts it. Like I said, there is no conflict. There is no conflict during the Quranic times by any one or more people with pagan Meccan Arabs. Impossible.
Can you elaborate on that? I'm very confused about that point.
Okay. Okay, let me elaborate on that. Yeah. A fundamental assumption of Islam is that there was this guy called Muhammad who lived in Mecca, who had a conflict with pagan, idolatrous people in Mecca. Yeah. They were worshipping idols, all sorts of different idols and so on. And Muhammad was preaching, and he got into issue, hot water, with the people there. They were upset, and they couldn't allow him to stay for long, and the persecution was so rife that he had to run away from Mecca to Medina, which is what you would call Hijrah. Just a portion of the supposed Muhammad's life. The problem is, if I can establish that the Quran contradicts that there existed such conflict between the supposed prophet of this Quran with people who were actually worshipping physical idols, if that wasn't the case according to the Quran, then clearly fundamental claims about the life of Muhammad are contradicted by the Quran. With me on that so far? That's what I'm saying. It's not just that. Many more details. Hijrah. Let me mention a couple other things. Would you know? So there's latest historical research by a doctor called Ahmad al-Jalad. Sorry, not Abdul. Ahmad al-Jalad. He's based in Ohio State University. The Ohio State University, I think. He's a professor there. He is arguably the leading expert in inscriptions. In the history of writing from the supposed Arabic areas. World's foremost expert. And he, along with the writings of another scholar called Layla Nahimi very clearly establish that the entire Arabic Peninsula did not have polytheism even for about a century or more before the time of the supposed advent of Muhammad. There was no polytheism in that land. All available evidence points to the fact that even though there were polytheists for until about a latest century before the supposed Muhammad, by the time of at least a century before Muhammad, they were all gone. Everyone were already monotheists. That is solid research based on inscriptions. Several thousands of them survive, inscriptions survive today. Based on that solid research, he concludes that. In other words, this contradicts the claim that Muhammad had a conflict. Muhammad was the guy who removed idol worship, physical idol worship from the Arabian Peninsula. Contradicts this entirely. You know, earlier, I don't know if you were involved in that discussion. Earlier we were talking about literacy rates. You know, Ahmed, I think his name was, he was saying, well, there was not much literacy there. People at that time, I forget the Arabic term, lived in a time of ignorance. What is the thing called? Jahiliyyah, yeah? That's a claim made. That's a fundamental claim in Islam. According to that claim, Islam brought in a period of so-called enlightenment, not in the Eastern way of thinking, but in a religious manner, Islamic religious manner, from a period of lack of knowledge, ignorance, enlightenment. But the problem is, the amount of available inscriptions from the entire land area again tells us that plenty of people were very knowledgeable during that time. Very knowledgeable, enough to be even able to write down simple daily emotions that they had on rocks, which are not easy to do. You know, for example, if let's take you and I, yeah. You know, you think about many things in a typical day, yeah. How many things do you really write down on a paper? Maybe once every 100 things you may write down on paper, yeah. Why? Because it's a bit costly to write down. It's a bit tedious, you know. Writing takes effort. Getting a paper, writing it down. Think about, this is paper and pen. Think about a rock and inscribing on a rock. How much more complex is that? Very much more complex. Takes plenty more effort. We wouldn't expect that to happen so often as even what we might do. But we find several thousand such inscriptions. So they claim that Jahiliyyah, period of ignorance, is fake, bogus. Polytheism is bogus. Age of ignorance is bogus. In the 7th century, when Muhammad is supposed to have ministered, 570 is when he is supposed to have been born. About 40 years of his age is when he is supposed to have begun his ministry. 610, 632 is when he is supposed to have died. 610 to 630, 632 AD, 7th century AD. During that time, a century before that, latest, in some regions even 2 centuries, monotheism everywhere. In other words, to claim that there was a guy who entered into conflict and he was severely persecuted by polytheists, impossible.
What was the name of the researchers you gave? You said
Ahmad al-Jalad.
Ahmed al-Jalad?
Yep.
And
Ahmad al-Jalad actually quotes mainly the work in this case, even though he is the foremost expert in inscriptions. In this particular conclusion, he quotes the work of who is called Layla Nahimi. Yeah, please, if you want to write down. Are you Muslim yourself?
Yeah. So
please.
This is the first time I'm hearing about this. So that's why, if we can't agree on these facts, then I have to go do research.
Absolutely.
So you can't argue right now.
No, absolutely. That's very wonderful. Absolutely, that's very wonderful.
Contradicts what we've learned. So what we
exactly
know is that there was monotheism, there was Judaism, there was Christianity in the Arab Peninsula, but there was also polytheism at the same time. They were all there at the same time.
But a rough estimate would be polytheism was more prevalent, because only then they can persecute Muhammad. If monotheism was more prevalent, Muhammad wouldn't have been persecuted. Because there is no record, according to Islamic claims, even at face value, that the monotheists persecuted him, that Jews or Christians persecuted him. That's not the claim advanced. The claim advanced is that the polytheists, idol worshippers, persecuted him. So you see my point? So that's very, what's your name?
Ahmed.
Ahmed, there was another Ahmed here actually a while ago. Please, are you from the UK, from London? Because your pronunciation, your accent is a bit different.
No, so I was born here, but I grew up in Sudan, I'm originally from Sudan. I grew up in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so that's where you have a bit. But please note down this, and I can give you my contact details. Hello, one second. Can you please check this out? And Ahmed, please check this out. I really appreciate the fact that you are willing to check what I am saying, and I'm very glad that you clearly see that if what I am saying is true, if those scholars are saying what they are saying, it clearly contradicts the Islamic narrative. I'm glad that you are seeing it. Unfortunately, many Muslims are too brainwashed that because of their religious commitment, they don't even want to accept it or see that truth. But of course, you need to verify if what I'm saying is true. Please do. My email address is there. And as a gift, maybe I'll give that book also. This is in relation to Jesus Christ, in contrast, where we can say, in other words, what I'm saying is, the origin of Islam is very, very shaky ground. Plenty of the assumptions, plenty of the claims for you, Ali, and for Card also for Ali. Plenty of the claims made here, not just in the Quran, but also in the Hadiths and Sirah and whatever, contradict early available evidence. I'll maybe give you one more example also, and then we'll. That's for you, Ali. So, one more example. Ahmed and Ali, one more example. So, maybe two more examples as a matter of fact. Example number one. If Islam is true, the cross of Christ, the cross, symbol of, would be something which would be disapproved of. Clearly, Islam wouldn't agree with the cross, whatever the context. A cross would be disapproved. You with me so far? But what we find is early coins. Of course, you have the Islamic Caliphate, the Caliphate, which today people understand to be Islamic. Whether it's true or not is a different story. Early coins minted by caliphs, early caliphs. Early coins minted by early caliphs have crosses on them. Huge problem. I'm not talking about Ahmed. For example, if Ahmed had a coin with a cross, I understand. Because Ahmed is a simple bloke, I'm assuming. Maybe you are not a simple, maybe you are a very influential bloke. But if you consider anyone like me, for example. I'm Muslim, which God forbid I'm not, but a simple Islamic bloke, if he had a coin with some cross, I understand, even though he is a Muslim, because he did not have much influence, carrying around a coin with a cross, I understand. But for a caliph of Islamic Caliphate, when he had all the authority to mint coins in the way he could mint, for him to have coins with crosses on them, we have huge issues again. The simple fact is, whatever was going on, that caliph did not follow the Islam that you may want to follow today. However you explain that, you see what I'm saying? Somewhere there is a disconnect. You see what I'm saying?
Which caliph?
Well, I need to get, so plenty. Muawiyah, for example. Early Muawiyah coins, you can see this. I unfortunately don't have that printer today. I have, by the way, in the YouTube channel that you have there, or if you email me, I'll give you a link of a video recorded where I've spoken about this. I'll give you again references to the scholarly articles on the coins. Find out the details. Yeah. Early caliphates, Rashidun Caliphate, and then Umayyad Caliphate. In Umayyad Caliphate you have, so Rashidun Caliphate had 4 caliphs, and then you have Umayyad Caliphate. In Umayyad Caliphate, one of the first, the Muawiyah, even coins minted by him. Bear in mind carefully, Sirahs and Hadiths weren't written down even at that time. They were written down even later. You see what I'm saying? In other words, I am talking about caliphs who even predate Sirahs and Hadiths. Clearly, whatever happened, they did not follow Islam of today. Something is, and this is where, connect all these dots. Polytheism wasn't there. If that is true, please verify. Polytheism wasn't there. Jahiliyyah wasn't there. They were happy to have crosses on their coins when they were in power. Inscriptions. Inscriptions. I mentioned about inscriptions earlier. I mentioned, especially I used inscriptions in reference to period before the supposed advent of Muhammad. Now if I were Rashidun Caliphate and so on, inscriptions during that time, it was very late until Muhammad was acknowledged as a prophet. Early inscriptions do not even talk about Muhammad when he is supposed to have been a primary character. I am talking about Islamic heartland, inscriptions in Islamic heartlands. They refer to Allah but not Muhammad, where Allah is of course a generic term which means God. So they could have referred to any God, not just an idea of God presented in the Quran. You see what I'm saying? Inscriptions don't talk about Muhammad, don't talk about Islam, don't talk about the fact of a new religion with a new prophet. They don't talk until very late. In other words, and clearly you don't have seerahs, no one attempting to write down seerahs. Of course, Muslims are giving all sorts of lame excuses for that today. They say, oh, people were waiting for the Quran to be written down first. It's huge problems with that claim. You know the claims, yeah? Seerahs, when you face a typical Islamic apologist here and ask them, why didn't anyone write? No, you understand, assuming you are a Sunni Muslim, even if you are a Shia Muslim, of course you disagree on what the example of Muhammad is, in regards to the sources, to get information on the example of Muhammad, but both of you agree that you need to follow the example of Muhammad. Yeah, in other words, knowing who he was is very important. Yeah, knowing who Muhammad was, what he did, how he did, what he did, and all those things are very important. Fundamentally important for a Muslim to live his life. And therefore, you would like to think that those details were written down. But they weren't. They weren't. I'll come to that later, sorry. I'm speaking to them, please. No. They weren't written down. It's simple. Well, like what? Were they written down? Were they written down or not?
Cross and stuff like this. The high likelihood is the earliest Muslims believe Jesus died on the cross. So the cross on the coin. Before the 7th century.
Excuse me, sir. I'd like to come to you. I'd like to come to your argument, which is a very different argument, a bit later. If you could, because he comes from a different perspective. I think I've seen one of your videos. In the Islamic perspective, do you believe Jesus died on a cross? That's what I'm talking about. He comes from a very different perspective. In other words, a cross. What I'm saying is very important. Ali and Ahmad, lives are at stake. What I'm saying is very, very important. Lives are at stake. You are a lovely young man. So is Ali. And so is your friend. And all of you would like to go to heaven. So would I like to. I would like to go to heaven. I would like me and my wife and my family and everyone else to go to heaven. I am a Christian. And I understand you're Muslims. As Muslims, you follow a religion so far. But my challenge is very simple. At the end of the day, you follow a religion with the understanding that following that religion is going to take you to heaven. That's the understanding you have in your mind. We would need to make sure that that is true. And that is what I'd like to make sure of Christianity also. And that is why I've researched my stuff and I've written down a book. I have certain very lofty claims about Jesus Christ. Of course, you might know, as Christians, we even claim that Jesus is God and so on. Very lofty claims, not simple claims, not even just that he is a prophet. Very lofty, God, divine, deity. And that is why knowing whether my claims are true is very important for me. And that is why I've done my research. I really recommend, your friend also, I really recommend you to do your research. Please do your research. Please shoot any questions you might have. let's get to the bottom of this. I genuinely think, you can challenge based on whatever you find, but I genuinely think,
What I recommend you do, yeah, is you go onto YouTube and you type in Arul, and you'll get his face come up, right? And watch every single video that he puts up. He lies from the beginning to the end. Don't have to believe me, just look it up. YouTube, Arul, A-R-U-L, yeah? Absolutely, yes. I'm not just the one that's saying this. You ask anyone here. The man lies from beginning to end. Yeah?
that's very nice. Yeah,
Yeah?
a
And
fellow.
he twists words, yeah?
A fellow Muslim says that you understood precisely what I said. His claim is what I am saying is a lie or all lies, and that is exactly. You didn't take my word. You didn't agree with me just because I said something, which is very intelligent. Anyone can say anything. Of course, it needs to be true. The difference between you, I have known him for a long time. He comes to the park very regularly. He makes claims without providing evidence. When you go home, check details. If what I said, I gave you precise statements. If what I said are true or lies, you will find out.
And
You will find out.
like this, refuting his lies. Yeah? He does not know me. Lies from beginning to end. Like I said, look on.
So let me give you an example. I'll give you a simple example.
On YouTube. Yeah,
I'll give you a simple example.
His wife saying this, yeah? Huh?
I'll give you a simple example.
Yeah, I know him from his videos. That's what I'm saying. That's what he's saying. He knows. And I know he lies. But I'm not on any videos.
Check out my videos. You will find him also in some of the videos, and you will find, unlike you, when I made,
This guy's a white guy, yeah? He's got
when I made claims, you are willing to check, which is the right thing to do. If what you find is, if you think I made nonsensical claims, you will find out. No one is forcing you on anything. You have only heard. You can check. Check on videos what this guy does when I challenge him. I can demonstrate that right away. I'll make the same claims that I made to you, I can make to him, and he will just begin ranting like a comedian and run away. That's what he would do, time and time again. But anyway, it's fine. So, yeah, sorry, go on.
Can you ask the thing is, can you ask him?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask you. This research for at least,
research.
you see,
Who did the research?
You see?
Don't tell me latest research. You just make stuff up and can recite no references.
did he allow me to finish a point?
You weren't making a point.
Ali,
You were
do
just about to
you
tell
think
a
he
lie.
allows me to make a point?
Go on then. Go on then.
Gotta have
Yeah.
respect.
Go on.
Please.
Go on then.
Latest research. A Professor Ahmed Al Jalad quotes another doctor, a scholar, Leila Nami, quoting scholarly research that clearly demonstrates that there is ample evidence across the Arabian Peninsula that at least for 100 years, in some situations for even about 200 years, before the supposed advent of
When
Muhammad.
you're coming anywhere near a point. Yeah? Come on then.
Do you think for
Stop showboating to the crowd, yeah? Make your point.
at least 400 years, in some situations even going up to 200 years, before the supposed advent of Muhammad and Islam, there was no polytheism across Arabian Peninsula. Scholarly research, no polytheism. In other words, the claim that Muhammad had a conflict with pagan Meccan Arabs is bogus according to their claims. And
Probably there is, but it's not the dominant.
Show it to me.
I,
Because you just quoted a whole load of names that mean nothing.
that mean nothing.
You know, they
Did
mean
you-
nothing.
did you-
Show me the evidence.
In the Quran.
Show me the evidence.
Ahmed, I'm giving you specific people.
Yeah, who are they?
Do you think I'm going to enjoy my conversation with this bloke?
I don't care whether you enjoy it or not.
Do you?
Yeah.
If I were to, what did you do? You are a very intelligent man. What did you do? You said, well, give me details.
Yeah.
I'll go home. I'll check it up. Simple thing to do. Ohio State University, very easy to find his writings in academia.edu. Very easy to find his writings. You're going to do that. If this a comedian stands here and says, show me the evidence, what should I think about him?
Yeah, but this is.
I honestly think,
So how is this going to relate to Christianity?
that's a different story. I'll come to that in a bit.
He's not
But my
here-
point,
He's not here for the love of Christianity. He's here for the hate of Islam. That's all he does.
Prophet Muhammad didn't
That's all he
exist.
does.
sorry, come again.
This is your conclusion. Prophet Muhammad did not exist. He's
My conclusion is very simple.
not historically a person.
My conclusion is very simple. I'm researching the Quran right now to come up with my own thesis. From what I can see, essentially what I can confidently say is, going by the details presented in the Quran, there were one or more guys, more people who were claimed to be not prophets but messengers. Of course, the Quran also claims many things about prophets of the past. I'm not talking about them, like Noah, Moses. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the claims made about messengers contemporaneous to the Quran. The ones who were influencing the Quran, the ones who were giving information to the Quran. There were one or more such people. It's very hard to say if there was one or more, very hard to say. But regardless, even if we assume, even if you are lenient to the Islamic,
And that's it. It says that in the Quran.
even if you are
saying-
lenient,
Hold on. Let's just clarify.
the gentleman asked a question, I'm answering him.
Let's just clarify.
Even if you're
You just made a claim.
Excuse me,
You're
I
saying
haven't
that's-
finished the
it says
statement.
that in the Quran. That's
I
what you
haven't
said.
finished my statement.
Is that what you said?
I haven't
Is
finished
that
my
what you
statement.
said?
I haven't
don't
finished-
care whether you finish your statement.
I
or
don't
not.
care what you have to say. Now coming to
Hold on. Is that what it says in the Quran?
Do you think
Is that what you
this
says
is what
in
he
the
does,
Quran?
week in, week
Is
out?
that what it says in the Quran? Is that what it says?
Did he let me finish?
Is that what it says in
What
the
do
Quran?
you think? Did he let me finish?
That's what you said. You said it says that in the Quran. Show me.
Do you think he let me finish?
Show me, please.
Good, clearly not.
Show me.
So,
Show
but
me.
he goes around,
Show me.
Show
me.
saying, telling
Show
people,
me.
just because he's a
Show
Muslim,
me.
he wants you to believe in him.
Show me.
Don't
I
believe
don't
in
want
it.
anybody to believe in me. You made comments about the Quran saying that there were
Thank you.
prophets who contributed
Ahmed,
to
because
it.
you are a
Show me.
respectable man,
Show me.
I was
Show me.
speaking to you.
Show me.
I'm
Show
trying to be
me.
asked. Normally he does this.
Then you are a liar.
let the conversation
Then
go,
a
let the
liar.
conversation go.
You're a liar.
Thank you.
Stop lying.
Thank you.
Yeah, stop lying.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Listen to the
I'm not
gentleman.
gonna let him lie.
Listen to
I'm
the-
not gonna let him lie.
This is what he does.
He's had more than enough time. Show it. Show it. Show it.
You think King
Show
Charles
it.
is the king of the nation? He seems to go around thinking he
You're
is.
showboating.
He is going to dictate
Yeah?
who is going to have how much time to
You're
speak.
showboating.
Now,
you're showboating.
thank you very much.
Show me in the Quran where it says
I don't
what you
have
just
to.
said.
I am not going to. Ahmed, to finish what I was saying earlier,
Saying about him
from
being
what
a
I
liar.
can find
Yeah?
in the
You're
Quran,
coming,
even
come back to them. Yeah?
Ahmed-
Not come back to them. Yeah?
Even-
He's a liar. He's a liar.
Operation Stephen. 1 second, sweetie, can you get me on a few more cards? Few more cards, please. So Ahmed, where's Ahmed now?
He
Has he
doesn't
gone?
want to listen to you anymore.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Well,
Show us in the Quran.
what were you saying, sir? Please. Oh yeah,
just want the-
Okay, for you, sir. Please email. Please email. Okay, please email, sir. Please. Yeah, absolutely. Please email, sir. Please email.
Quran. Show us
I
where
don't
it's
have
said.
to.
You
I
made
don't
a
want to
claim.
waste my time.
Liar.
I don't want to waste my time.
You're a
What do you,
liar.
this guy
You're a liar.
doesn't listen.
No,
He doesn't let other people listen.
Muslim?
Please don't follow his example. His only criterion is follow him.
Do you know one
That's
time?
his only
right,
point.
One time he was chasing.
Do you
this
think you
woman,
can-
This muhajiba, he was chasing her, and she kept on at him. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk.
All right.
He was kind of grabbing hold.
Don't
of her.
touch me.
If it wasn't
Please don't touch me.
But I got in between them and threatened to call the police. That's when he backed off. Yeah, that's when he backed off.
Please don't touch me.
Yeah? I'm not touching you.
Is
If
that
I
true?
touch you, I'd have
What
to
is
renew
true?
my
What you just
wudu.
said,
Well, I didn't hear what he said.
harassing
Yeah?
the lady,
So like
Harassing.
touching
What
a
do you mean
dog.
harassing? What was it?
trying to get her. And that.
No, he was
What do you mean get her? I was trying. I always.
Policeman.
me.
You go, Suti. You go. Yeah, just give me the. No, just no. Umbrella. I'm fine. Get me the bag. I'm fine, Suti. You go with the umbrella. Yeah? Please go, and I'll ring you later to find out where you are. All right. What I normally do.
I'd walk away. Just leave.
No.
Spend time
Go on,
lying to you.
His brain overheats.
I mean, how much of that? How much?
Let me. What's your name?
Someone over there told me in the Quran is worse than
What's your name? My young man, what's your name?
Muhammad.
Muhammad, let me put it this way. Reading the, do you
He's
understand,
going to tell you the same different way.
Muhammad, have you got a brain that works? Can you listen to
I've
someone?
got a brain damage.
You
Wallahi,
have?
Wallahi, I've got a brain damage.
Well, then I'm really sorry.
It's fine.
Because I normally make points.
I can still function fine. Look.
I can, were you serious when you said?
Yeah, I was. Look, I can. Look,
Oh, I'm sorry,
My
I'm sorry.
brain still can do this.
Oh, no, I thought you were joking.
No, I wasn't.
I really thought you were joking. I'm really sorry. Now, let me put it this way. When I early, late sources.
Yeah,
For example, let's say this gentleman is popular, he started a new religion. Let's say, which he won't do, I'm just saying, Let's say he started a new religion, yeah. Now, there might be, he is of course living.
I don't know what he's gonna do or not do.
No. This is just for a hypothetical scenario. I'm just here explaining a hypothetical scenario. Let's say he starts a new religion.
The word of God, the light of the world. What religion are you?
I am a Christian.
I'm not sure about
I follow the Lord Jesus Christ.
I follow Jesus as well.
How do you follow Jesus Christ? Do you worship him? Do you take the fact of his sacrifice seriously on the cross? So clearly we don't follow the same Jesus. Clearly we don't follow the same Jesus.
No, because
Clearly we don't follow the same Jesus.
different stuff about him, innit?
Muhammad, clearly we don't follow the same Jesus.
There's only one Jesus.
No, but clearly your Jesus is not my Jesus. Clearly, do you agree?
I follow Jesus. I don't know who you're following.
Good. So clearly we follow two different versions of Jesus. One of us is wrong.
There's only one Jesus.
At least one of us is wrong. Do you agree?
Okay, good.
At least one is wrong. Do you agree? Now the question is, do you know which Muhammad? Do you know Jono? Good to see you. Amy, good to see you. Do you know which Jesus is attested to Muhammad? Do you know which Jesus is attested to by historical evidence, artifacts? I'm asking.
No, I don't know nothing.
The cross of Jesus Christ is arguably the most historical fact. 1 second, please.
It's supposed to keep raining now.
Sure, City, I'll come. You go. That's fine, sir. I come. Huh?
Don't you want to come with us?
No, City, in a
At
bit.
least take the umbrella. We will go until it's not really raining.
For cooties. Don't worry, City. Go, I'll come. Yeah? Yeah.
The camera,
Oh, did it?
your wife gave me a different
Ah, okay. When did it cut?
He wants a check.
When did that cut? 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Oh.
Say,